maybe a little too much about here at Citadel is leadership. So before I lose you guys entirely with that word, I want to say I'm going to approach it a little differently today. Oftentimes leadership gets tossed around at the Citadel, perhaps a little too much. I think they're just trying to beat into our head. So it may lose its meaning some of the time. So besides, the traditional examples of, being a leader, setting the example, moral and ethical stuff, I'm just going to approach it from a practical standpoint today. And I'm also going to combine that with a little bit of psychology that I learned about last year called the diffusion of responsibility. All right, to begin with, can anyone tell me who this person is in this picture? Kitty Genovese. And does anyone else know who that is? We got a couple people. For those who don't know what Kitty Genovese is, it's something that happened in 1964 in March, and it's a tragic event, but it shaped part of the way that we looked at psychology today, and something known as the bystander effect, also known as the diffusion of responsibility. And the reason I want to bring this up to you today is that we've all encountered this at the Citadel in our lives at some point or another, even if we don't recognize it. And you come into a classroom for the first time, do you typically sit in the front, the back? If you're sitting in the back, you're in a way displaying this diffusion of responsibility. You don't want to be noticed. You don't have to sit up there and answer all the questions. You're just going to let everyone else in the class do most of the work and ask those questions if you're 90% of the people here. Kitty Genovese, on the night of March 13th, 1964, I don't want to get into all the details because they're pretty gruesome, was stabbed repeatedly, raped, and then left to die on a doorstep outside her apartment building. And what's tragic about this, beyond the fact that she died, she was raped, stabbed multiple times while defending herself, was that it was later proven that 38 people heard her screams and could have been there to help her. But why? Why did no one from that 38 group of people in that apartment complex come to help her? Some of the responses they got when they questioned people later were, "It's not my problem, I didn't want to get involved," or they just ignored it. They wanted it to go away so they didn't have to deal with it. And we'll be the first ones to say, that's awful. Why didn't they do anything? They could have helped her. She could be alive today and speaking to us. But we also have to realize that the people that in that apartment complex weren't all that different than we are today. They think the same. I guarantee you if this happened today in New York, outside of the same apartment building, you'd probably get the same response. And the reason for that is something they came up with in psychology called the bystander effect. The bystander effect is, perhaps we already know about it. The more people that are involved, the less willing we are to get involved. And they've done several studies about this, and they've come up with a critical number for people to get involved. Say it's an emergency, and you're the only person there. Studies show that 85% of people placed in an emergency situation, where they're the only one, they'll respond. Following that, if they're along with another person, they'll only respond 60% of the time. And once they reach that critical number, 3, the response goes down to 31%. Why is this? If you're in a group, typically, you're going along with what's called groupthink. You don't want to make the decisions. You don't want to have to. But that's why we need leaders. As in a group of 3 people, 4, perhaps 100, or maybe there's 38 people, if we had a leader to step up and say something, knowing ahead of time that no one else in that group is going to say anything, and you're mentally prepared to take that challenge, then you're going to be that person that steps up. I want to talk about something sort of in relation to that. This graph right here is the world population, and when you see a curve like this, it's called exponential growth. For those who know what exponential growth is, and for those who don't, it's whenever something keeps increasing at an increasing rate. So this line's going to get steeper and steeper with people. So in response to that, we need more leaders. And that's why something like the Citadel is extremely applicable in today's world. It may seem awfully dull to you guys that we're a school that produces leaders. We just a lot, but it's a lot. So if we're stepping into a business environment where people are sort of following the group, groupthink, they're not taking responsibility for their organization's actions because, there's other people in that organization, and why do I have to be the one to be responsible for that organization? Well, as a leader, you have to step up and you have to make that change because you know ahead of time that if you were in that 38 group of people outside Ken and Genevieve's store, you would have been the one to save her. If you're in an organization, you have to be that person to step up because you know ahead of time that those other people aren't going to do that. And so 3 steps I found in this psychology article that I was reading. Say if you're in an emergency situation, these are the 3 things you want to make sure you want to do. Display leadership. If you arrive at the scene, someone's gotten a heart attack, and everyone's just standing around, they don't know what to do. Take charge. Take charge of that situation. You need to step up and display leadership, set the example. Just doing that is going to get people to go along and facilitate you. But also, some people won't, which is why you need to follow 2. You need to make it seem personal. And this is for situations that are emergencies, but also for situations that are just everyday, mundane things. You got to make people, you have to explain to them why you need to do this. You need to call 911 to get an ambulance here so this person can live. Or if you're an organization that's not practicing something ethical, you need to step up and explain to them why that applies to them. Also, to follow up, target individuals rather than groups. It's easy to say, Toastmasters, we got a problem, we need to do something. Everyone will be like, yeah, we agree. If you say, Toastmaster Keener, this problem is your problem, what are you going to do to solve that? You're going to be more likely to step up and take charge of that situation. And so I'm running a little on time here. I'm just going to sum it up with one of my favorite quotes from a man I think we can all take a lesson from, Mahatma Gandhi. Be the change that you want to see in the world. And you can dumb that down to your organization or a group or an emergency. Be the person to take charge and make change in that organization, that group, that situation. Even if it's just 3 people, even if it's a classroom, teacher's asking a question, wants to volunteer, you got to stick your hand up and say, I'm going to be that person to make that change. And that is a diffusion responsibility as it applies to leadership. Thank you.